Hey guys, so today I'm going to break down for you from Travel Joy the different templates that I have and the order of which I send them. It is very important that you guys have some sort of system in place. The reason being is you need to protect yourself against liability, right? So there's a huge importance in making sure you send what I call my travel services agreement. Basically, it just outlines what I discuss over the consultation, whether you follow my method or not. It is important to have an agreement, right? And especially if you have a company, even if it's not an LLC and you just register under an EIN number with the IRS. Again, I'm not licensed to give legal advice like that. However, this is based on what I'm currently doing. So I would advise you to connect with an accountant or someone that can give you legal advice based on their license. With that said, if I take you to my dashboard on Travel Joy, you will see in front of you from my dashboard, I have different buttons, right? Or different sections that I can click on the left-hand side. We're going to start under templates. All right. So when I'm under templates, the first one that I want to highlight is the terms and conditions. Now, before I click on it, I kind of want to just do a quick overview on what terms and conditions can be, because it goes beyond the travel services agreement, right? It can be considered your CC authorization. So if you are going to charge someone's card for a booking of any kind, I know specifically with Archer and Evolution, there is a form that you can fill out, and there's still might be guidelines that need to be followed based on suppliers that are used. So that is up to you and your discretion. I would definitely contact your mentor in relation to that if you do have questions. However, the suppliers that I have been using, along with the booking periods of which my clients book at or book through, I haven't had to submit anything to Archer. I do have myself protected and covered on multiple different aspects of the business. I did, after a year of running my business, go ahead and get an LLC and get organized in a different state. I am based out of Chicago. However, I incorporated my company in the state of Florida based on advice that I received from my accountant, given my situation, right? It varies from person to person. So I got an LLC, and then I was advised after getting an LLC to convert that to an S Corp for tax related purposes. Again, this is a case-by-case basis. So advise a professional that can guide you in that direction. Now, with that said, when I click on terms and conditions, there are 4 different terms and condition templates that I currently have right now. So the travel services agreement is one of them. The trip protection is one of them. The invoice or the CC authorization is one of them. And then I have one specifically for groups that I'll continue to build on because I'm in the process of assisting and booking destination weddings. So for individual travel bookers or trips, let's focus on these 3. All right. So the first one that I want to highlight is the travel services agreement. I do have another training on this one. So I'm going to just cover this briefly. And I really want you guys to focus on the order of how I cover it. All right. So we're going to touch on terms and conditions first, then forms, then emails. Okay. It has to go in that order because you have to have a terms and condition that you can attach to the form. And then that together will be attached to the email that you send your client. All right. So terms, forms, and emails, those all need to be set up in order for this to work. All right. So if we start with travel services agreement and I go ahead and click on that, I do have a template that you guys can copy. I need to figure out the best way to get that out to you. So in the meantime, if you're watching this video and you don't have that copy, please just reach out directly to me on Facebook, and I will make sure I can give that to you. Or it's typically posted on travel knowledge. So if you search on Travel Knowledge 2.0 and you look for travel services agreement, there will be a Google Doc that I share with you guys to copy, paste, and modify. All right. Again, this is just my template. You can modify as according to your business and how you want to run it. These are just guidelines, right? So I'm not going to cover this too much, but what I do want to highlight is just the section. All right. I'm going to click save. The next one I want to cover specifically is trip protection. All right. Travel insurance. The reason I created a separate one for this is because I actually had an issue with a corporate client. All right. So there were some issues back and forth with this corporate client who was being a little bit difficult. And I am so glad I sent it to her. It was something that she did decline. However, when asked for anything that was signed, I was protected because I had all of this sent out to her. And this is stuff that I send before I even book the trip. So make sure all of these things are completed. I know sometimes we're super excited to get something across the finish line. However, you need to protect yourself against a liability because you will very much regret it if you don't. All right. So the travel insurance is key here, you guys, because even though it is in the travel services agreement, I do like to take it a step further and make them click that they accept or deny it before booking the trip. If they click accept, then it is your responsibility to quote it out if that is what's in your agreement and you are going off of this. Okay. Now, when I say quote it, I go through TinLeg, right? You could go through whatever supplier you're booking it through. However, I have found a lot more success through TinLeg because it doesn't just cover them against the supplier itself. It's everything, including what I call my retainer deposit or my travel planning rate, or if I go through a wholesaler and something happens, they will be covered through TinLeg based on the policies if you have it written as non-refundable. So again, not licensed or able to give legal advice on the insurance aspect either. If you have questions in relation to that, my best piece of advice is to reach out to TinLeg directly for some clarity. But that's who I book a majority of my policies through. And on top of it, it not only protects the client against anything that could occur before or during the trip, but also it is a good money making opportunity for you. TinLeg is very, very giving when it comes to commissions. I think they give around 16% of whatever the payout is. So if we're focusing on trip protection, you can choose to name the template however you want. Again, I will share this on Travel Knowledge 2.0, so make sure you use that search feature to look at the template and then modify accordingly. The only difference here that you will modify is the template will say company name versus my company. It'll be your responsibility to read through that, make sure you really understand what you are sending to people. Hold yourself accountable of that. If questions are asked, you can easily know where to reference it. And then anything else that you would like. So again, this will be a copy and paste. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then lastly, I want to show you guys the CC authorization. Again, I will have a copy and paste on Travel Knowledge 2.0. The only thing you'll really have to change here is it'll say company name instead of my company. And then you'll change that to either your name or your company name. Moving on, I would like to touch on forms. So remember I said terms and conditions, forms, and then emails. So if we are going in the order of which we did for terms and conditions, travel service agreement form. All right. I try to make this as easy as possible for you guys to understand. Again, rename whichever works best for you. But the form template here can get confusing if you don't do it in this order. All right. So it'll bring you to this page with stuff on the sidelines, right? Obviously, your page might be blank because you haven't built the form out yet. I will touch on the building out in a second, but what I want to highlight first is the advanced form options. This is what allows the terms and conditions to connect with the form. All right. So that is the key factor before sending the email, because then the last thing with email, which I'll touch on after this, is you'll make sure that the form connects to the email, right? So if we're going in order, I have the template name. You don't need to worry too much about the button. I'll show you on the preview what that looks like. The confirmation template. So confirmations are a separate tab on the left-hand side. We're not going to focus on that yet, or right now, at least in this specific training, but just make sure it says form confirmation. The email template, all right? So this will come after. We'll create that email and you can go and back and change this, but you need to make sure whatever email you have specific to the travel service agreement, the insurance, the invoice, that it points to the form that you want them to fill these questions out on, okay? View agreement, again, this is the button. You can choose to change that. You don't really need to change that. And then if a client authorization section is checked for the agreement portion, you don't need that to be checked. You can go ahead and uncheck that. But lastly, you do want to make sure that the add terms and conditions section and require client signature, that box needs to be checked, because you want to make sure the terms that we just covered previously are attached to this form. And after we go ahead and build this form out, then the client will also be responsible, not just for clicking this and typing their name, but also adding that signature form. All right. So before I go ahead and break down how to build the form out, I want to highlight the preview feature. All right. The preview is what's going to allow you to see what the final product looks like. All right. So this is the form portion right here that we're going to build out. Everything else, right? This is the terms and conditions that you guys will copy from a template, okay, or create of your own. When I scroll all the way down to the bottom, it requires the client to sign, all right? So that is the biggest factor. Now I'm going to go back and build the form, or show you how to build it, and then you will see how I get to where I'm at. All right, so if I click build, travel services agreement, basically that's a header, right? So I'm going to pull them down here and delete them after, but just to show you, for header, if you want to edit anything, you have to click the little pencil that says edit, okay? Now, when it says type, there's H1, H2, H3. That's basically just different font types. So if I click H2, you'll see that the header has changed, the font. H3, header again has changed. So typically I like H2 for the header. So for this one, I'm going to choose H2 and I'm going to type in travel services agreement. Okay. Now, if I'm building this box is going to be I think it's a checkbox group. So I'm going to drag that down here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click edit. And I'm going to click required. The reason that I click required, you guys, is because they can't move on to the form without filling these things out. And that's what you want. You want to make sure they type it. You want to make sure they check it. And then obviously they have to sign it. So for this label, I'm going to go ahead and type in, by checking this box, I agree to the terms and conditions of this agreement. Doesn't really matter if you capitalize the A or not, I just do. And then when it comes down to the options, you're just gonna have one option, all right? That basically says they have to agree to them, right? Because if they click no, doesn't do you any good, right? So yes, I agree to these terms and conditions. You could type it out, you could use the symbol, doesn't really matter, okay? And you'll see it as an asterisk if it's required. And then lastly, you can click the client name, or you can just go ahead and type text fields. For this one, I'll do text field. Basically, the client profile, it just is attached to their profile that you've built on TravelJoy. Right now, I wouldn't focus or worry too much about that, especially in the beginning stages. You could worry about that stuff later. We just need to get the template built out. So for text field, again, I'm going to click require. The label, I'm going to put as full name. And then if I click close, again, same thing. The only difference is you won't see this blue thing. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and click preview, you're going to see two sections of what we just built out. Okay. And then I'll delete it. But I want you guys to see this is the same as this. It is grayed out because we're building it, but it'll be open when you send this to your client for them to fill out. And then if I scroll all the way to the bottom, it will only have one signature just because that part that's duplicate is part of the building process, not the check mark, right? You have the check mark, so it's only going to provide one. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and then we're going to move on to building the next form. The key factor here, you guys, do not forget to click save. I've done this so many times. It'll show you on the left-hand side if it's been saved or not. While you guys are building this stuff, constantly click save, all right? I don't click save as much now because it's already been built out, but trust me, I've had to rebuild forms tons of times, and it's not fun if you do it, if you constantly save. So if I click back on forms, let's move on to the travel insurance. Now your form setup might be different just because I've archived certain forms. I will also show you guys how to create a new form if it's not on there. But highlighting this, let's just take a quick look at the preview so that you guys can see my terms and conditions is there for trip protection. All right. The only thing I'm adding is I'm making them choose accept or decline, and then they sign it. Okay. So if I go and build this out, remember, again, you always want to start with show advanced form options. The template name, again, we're not touching on this right now. The email template, we will touch on in a second how that points. But again, you want to make sure that add terms and conditions section and require client signature is selected. And when it comes down to terms and conditions itself, make sure you have the trip protection terms and conditions that we've created or that you copy and paste from what I sent on Travel Knowledge. You have that selected here because that's what shows up on the preview. Now, if we're building the form out again, right? So I'm going to go ahead and choose a header. Again, I like H2. And I'm going to type in travel insurance. I'm also going to put a paragraph. All right. So I want to put a paragraph because I'm not going to do anything. I basically just want to have written what I already have above. All right. So feel free to pause and play this. I will try and include it on that form at the bottom part so that if you guys want to just quick copy and paste it, you can do that. Right. But basically it says, by signing below, I understand that declining travel insurance could result in the loss of my travel cost and or require more money to correct the situation. I acknowledge that without insurance, there might be no way to recoup any losses, costs, or expenses incurred. Okay, that is key, you guys. You don't want people coming back, trying to sue you, trying to say, at the end of the day, in the court of law, you just want to be protective. And this is what will help protect you in your case if you're ever guided that route. Okay, the hopes is to avoid that. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy paste that close. You could see it's duplicated. And then under please choose. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click a checkbox group. And I can also add an option. So for the label, I will say, please choose. Option 1, I accept travel insurance. I decline travel insurance. I understand that this could result in the loss of all of my travel costs. Okay. Now, the boxes look a little bit different, so let's see why. Okay, what we want is the radio group. So let's backtrack. Radio group for travel insurance. All right, let's see what the difference is. So I think that the radio group means they have to choose one of the 3 options, and the checkbox group can allow them to check more than one. All right. So that was my mistake, but I'm glad that I can point that out to explain to you guys the purpose of the radio group versus the checkbox group. All right. Radio group means one selection or option. All right. So for here, again, I'm going to remove that second option. I'm going to put, I accept travel insurance. And then here, I'm going to just go ahead and copy this to make it easier. And let's go ahead and click require that. All right, so if I delete this box that we created and I close this, all right, same thing, right? So again, I'm going to show you the preview and then we'll go ahead and delete it and move on to the next thing, right? Please choose. Now here, I think I created a space, so you can choose to do that or not. See where that would be. I think it might just be under, let's try check text fields. Delete that. Let's see if it does anything. That might leave it blank. Yeah, so we don't want that. All right, so let's see if we could do maybe header and then see if we can delete. Nope, says undefined. So let's try paragraph. Paragraph, delete the content. Let's see if it shows anything. No. All right, lastly, let's see if I type a space. The space does it, you guys. All right, so let me just recap that in case I confused any of you. But we did the header for this option. All right, so we did a header. We did the paragraph and we copy and pasted this. We added another paragraph and we typed a space in to get this spacer. And lastly, we choose radio group and we deleted that third option and we only created 2 and we also marked it required. So now looking back at the preview, you can see this is the part that we just did. This is the terms and conditions that you attached, and this is the check mark that you clicked to get here. All right, so remember to click that save button throughout, and then I want to move on. All right, so the last thing I want to move on to today, there will be another thing that I'm going to point out on this form specifically, but it's basically the 4 things that I send them before I will book anything. So I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, so let's backtrack a hot second. I had to go out and edit a few things so that I don't confuse you guys even more. But as far as the forms, kind of just leaving where we left off. So there's a travel services agreement, the trip protection, and then the passport booking info. As far as this action list with first invoice, please ignore that. I have to figure out a way to send that out automated. But in the meantime, I don't want you guys to worry about that because that was a recent addition that I added. Basically, if I click on it, I'll show you in the emails what it says, but it doesn't necessarily need a form. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the emails tab. And then from there, I will talk about the 3 different forms that we've completed today, or the 2 different forms we've completed today, along with a few other ones that might be good to notate. All right, so if we start with the agreement for the travel services agreement, you guys will have a lot of defaults in here. Not all defaults are going to have the best of information or necessary. Okay, so what I've done is I've either modified the default or I've added a new template. Now, there will always be an add template here in any of the sections that I've pointed out, the terms and conditions, the forms, the emails. So if you want to create something from scratch here, you can do so. All right. I will touch on the ones that might be good to have, ones that I might still need to update myself, but have been programmed here and automated for some time now. So if we're going back to the travel services agreement and I click on agreement email, this is something that I've edited. Okay. Normally it'll have this part when you start and maybe another little message. I have changed the subject. If I need something from a client, I will list action required in caps. And then for this one, travel agreement signature needed. You can see where it says client preferred name. That is what I took from here. All right. So I could put first name, which I actually might change it to, otherwise it'll do the full name. So if I do client first name, please review and sign the agreement attached. The agreement goes over what I covered during our initial consultation with the trip management rate and retainer deposit due today. Parentheses, 50% of the total, and will be used in the form of a credit towards the overall trip cost upon booking. Now, if this sounds like gibberish, you guys, you don't need this, okay? Until you understand what I'm referring to, delete that part that I'm highlighting. Just keep please review and sign the agreement attached. Now, it's important to note, and why I stress reading these things first, because a lot of the times I have stuff in my forms that I just bring to light again in the body email. If you are not collecting a research and planning fee, or what I call my trip management rate, if you are not doing what I call my retainer deposit, these are separate and independent from Archer Evolution. Okay. These are my instant commission opportunities where the money goes directly to me. Archer has absolutely no part in it. It is something that I have worked towards. It's something I've implemented and created a script for, again, in a completely separate training. But I want to highlight that and make sure that you guys understand the importance of that, because otherwise, when people bring that question up to you and you're like, I don't know, it should click in your head that it was a reminder in this specific video to do that. Okay. You can't just be putting forms and stuff into place without knowing what you're actually putting in place. All right. And then when I scroll down, so it has these different form templates. Now, mine, I actually might need to just go back and make sure that my current form is listed in here, because if it's not pointing to the correct form, it's not going to match up. So the way I can check that is I can go under form templates. All right. And then my travel agreement form is this one specifically. when I click show advanced options, I need to make sure under email, it has the agreement email template. All right. So if you don't have anything under that, all you have to do after you create your email templates is go back to forms and make sure you choose the email template that points to the form you want to send. Also remember, the terms and conditions needs to also be done to connect it to the form. All right, so there's 3 parts. I keep reiterating, I sound like a broken record, but I just want to keep pointing that out so you guys don't forget. All right, so if I go ahead, click save, and then go back to emails, and I click that agreement email, it has travel service agreement form on here. It might also be paired to other ones that I've archived or deleted, but it's just important to notate the one you're currently using is on here. All right. Moving on. If I go back to emails, I want to highlight the travel insurance email. All right. So if I scroll down, travel insurance email. Again, action required, trip protection, or accept or deny. All right, so I'm going to change this again to client first name. And it reads as follows. Please carefully read the following terms and conditions regarding trip protection before booking your trip. By booking a trip with Dauntless Travel, that's my company. So for yours, it'll say your company or name. You acknowledge that you have read, understood, and agreed to these terms and conditions regarding trip protection. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact us for clarification before proceeding with your booking. Again, it's attached to the travel insurance form. I will go ahead and click save for the changes that I made, but I want to then show you guys real time what it looks like. The other email that is important, and this is a form that I can share the link with you guys to input into your forms, but that's going to be the travel information and pre-departure email. So again, action required, passport and pre-departure booking information. All right, I will copy and paste this into a template as well. This is something that I just took a little time to create. Again, the easier you make things for your client, the quicker it is, the better experience that they have. So I'll read this through. I will attach the link under one of my Google Forms again, and you can copy and paste. But this reads as follows. In order to move forward with your trip, I need a copy of each passenger's existing passport to have on file. All passengers must have a valid passport good for at least 6 months after the last date of the trip. Some countries are stricter than others with this rule, so it's better to be safe than sorry. If the passenger does not have this handy at the time of booking, it is their responsibility to complete the necessary form and payment in a timely fashion. The form types can be found on the U.S. Department of State website here. All right. In order to create this, all I did was I typed the word here. I clicked this arrow. I added insert link. And then I went ahead, copy and pasted that area on the website, which essentially is here. All right. So it brings them to this page. Now I took it a step further. I listed the 2 forms that are common. The DS-11, application of US passport. So I put in parentheses, applying for the first time or child under the age of 16. And then secondly, the DS-82, which is the renewal of US passport, expired with the previous passport in hand, which is important. Or if the child has a passport expired and is under the age of 16, they must apply using a DS-11 again. Okay, so I just have that notated. Sometimes people don't always know, so just give them the information again. Please note the following circumstances. There may be additional forms to complete and not limited to. If your passport has been lost or stolen, you must complete Form DS-64 and apply using a DS-11 in person. If you are taking your child to get a passport for the first time, there are additional forms that might be required as listed on the website for those separated from their birth parent. All right. So this is people that are divorced. Maybe they have baby mamas or baby daddies. It's important that they cover themselves. It's not your responsibility. All you need to do is convey that. All right. If you are applying for the first time or need a reminder on what to include, click here for the appropriate steps. Again, I typed here, I clicked the arrows, I added the attachment, and that brought me to this page. All right. This basically just tells them everything that they need, right? The requirements, they can fill it out online, evidence, right? Any photocopies that they need, such as a birth certificate, etc. Photocopies, the types of photos, fees, locations, tracking status, things like that. And then lastly, I have, you may attach the passport copies by replying to this email or to hello@dauntlesstravel.com, and you will just replace that with your email. All right. None of my info should be here. This should all be yours. But that will attach back to this form that I have filled out. All right. So I will show you that form specifically real time, just so you guys know what it looks like. I will share it to the page that I will have on Travel Knowledge 2.0 if you guys want to just copy it and add it into your travel knowledge for the form part and then just create the email. But to show you what that form looks like, all right, this is good info for all of you. It is a detailed form that you will have to create on your own if you can't copy and paste it. But it's important when you do copy and paste it, you guys change that each passport will be sent to your email instead of mine. Okay. So if I click on that form, that pre-departure form, and I show advanced settings, again, I have it pointing to the passport info and pre-departure email we just covered. All right. There doesn't need to be a signature. There does not need to be an authorization. Again, it's an information form with details. Now, there might be another way for them to attach all the passports. However, I have found this works the best for me. And then what I do is I just upload it to their file in TravelJoy, but it makes them type done. All right. So whether they click done and don't send it to me, it's notated, right? Whether they chose to or not is on them. I also have list each traveler's name as printed on passport. Note, please make sure this information is correct to prevent issues during travel. Name change fees may apply post booking. The reason I have this little disclosure listed is because it's also really good to just copy it and throw it in versus typing it. All right. If you follow it that way and you just copy the first name, copy the last name, copy the middle name if necessary and applicable, it is easy to just say and blame it on the client if it's not done correctly. All right. You don't want the blame to fall back on you. Next, the traveler's birthday, month, day, year, and age at time of travel. All right. I also would like to notate, sometimes it's good to know the age of booking, or the age they are at time of booking. You could create another section for that, which I might do. The reason I say that isn't necessarily for the booking itself, but for the insurance portion. The insurance, if you are using Tin Lake specifically, it's the age of the traveler at time of booking. All right, so two different things. And I will actually do that to show you guys how these forms are created. They're all pretty much the same thing, and it's the text area that most of these forms are. All right. There's a few one-offs, which are the text field. The difference between field and area is field is a one line and area is like a section. Okay. And you can add this little information in here. And then I have traveler preferences on here. Again, using the text area, additional information, and I'll cover this all in detail in a second. and kind of read through it in case you can't get access to mine. And then we'll create together the time of travel that I'm talking about, age at time of booking, just so you could see how I'm building it out. So if I move down, we covered this one, but if I want to add another section, I'll go ahead and slide this over to where I want it. Again, the edit, and the label will be list each traveler's age at time of booking. Okay, I'm going to click required, but I also have that bolded because there's a difference, travel and booking. All right, some people might be confused, so it's important to notate that. All right, for the help text, basically the help text is where you see this question. All right, so how old will you be when you leave for your trip versus how old are you today? That's what this one is. My help text here will be how old is each traveler today versus during time of travel. So the placeholder here will be example, John D. Smith. Let's just say he's 38 years old today. So when I close that, you could see the title's there, that placement's there, and then that help text, right? So going back, the help text is the question mark. The placeholder is this gray mark that you see that'll go away once the client types in it. Same thing, right? Each traveler's passport issuance date, okay? Each traveler's passport expiration date, and each traveler's state of residence if different per person. The reason I say this again is for insurance purposes. If the travelers reside in different states, then they need different insurance policies. I have a couple right now that's traveling where they're engaged, but one has a permanent home in Arizona, the other one has a permanent home in California. Their licenses are registered to those states, even when they are with each other in each other's state. All right, so separate policies for them. Also, if you have a person, say, living in the state of Arizona, and maybe all travelers are in Arizona, but they are leaving earlier or they're leaving later, you may want to quote a different insurance policy. Say they're going to a state before, right? So maybe I'm from Illinois and I'm traveling to Arizona before I fly over to Europe, right? I would put the date that I was leaving Illinois, not the date that I'm leaving Arizona, right? It's when the traveler's leaving from the actual state they reside in to leave for their journey for the trip. Next, emergency contact information. This is also good when you guys are doing groups, all right? So when I say one per booking, it's good to have. God forbid something happens, at least you have a name, phone number, any sort of relationship where you can contact that person and let them know. It's not your responsibility. However, it's a good thing to have, peace of mind for everyone. Travel preferences. This will just help you guys in the future and expedite the process. So known traveler number, KTN, is also the number they give you during if you have TSA pre-check or global entry. If the client has clear, they don't have a number. It's something they do in person, right? So you don't need to notate that here. Their actual ticket will say something different, but they'll go through a clear line. Again, that's not up to you or your responsibility. The reason I have this here is to avoid it, avoid the situation occurring of, well, you checked me in and I didn't have travel, or I didn't have TSA pre-check on my thing. And it's like, well, you didn't tell me. Well, going back to this form, if it's not notated on the form, It's one other proof and piece of evidence that it was asked. All right. And you don't have to remember this either. It's automated. So looking at the form, hovering over, I have the help text as, please note, if this is left blank upon booking, it will be the client's responsibility to update their profile with the airline during online check-in. Seat preference per traveler, optional. Help text, please write the preferred seat type for each traveler if necessary. If this isn't noted, seats will be randomly assigned. Again, don't want to get hate for it, right? Loyalty programs, right? So some of these suppliers, like American specifically, if you're booking through AA Vacations, in order to book through them, each client must have an advantage number. If they don't, they can create it for free, but it must be before booking, or they will not be able to take advantage of that vacation package. You'll have to book through a different supplier. Now, these are also just good for you to have on their file. If there are places where you can add it, you can, go ahead and do that yourself. But again, it's just good to notate, it's just helping the client out. Little things to just separate you from other travel agents. And then I also have important dates. So any anniversaries, milestones, graduations, bar bat mitzvahs, quinceañeras, things like that they can write down if they want. They don't really have to. Lastly, additional information. So do you have any dietary restrictions or food allergies? Favorite beverages? Again, part of the client profile. This is somewhat important to notate if it's something that was addressed during the client consult. Maybe the client has a severe peanut allergy, right? Maybe they have epilepsy, and it might not be related to that. It'll be maybe to the second one. Do you have any medical conditions we need to be aware of? And then anything else you think we should know? Special requests, traveling with a group, comments, notes, etc. And then what I'm going to do again, click save. Again, this is an information thing. This isn't necessary. All of it's not necessary to fill stuff out. Again, just good things to notate for peace of mind. So going back to emails, today we went over the terms and conditions, the forms and the emails, specifically for the travel service agreement, for the trip insurance, and for the passport information and pre-departure, right? The pre-departure, all of that does not have a terms and conditions. It really just has a form. So you just need to make sure that form is pointing to the email. Also, I want to highlight the email of invoice authorized payment. So this one specifically is attached to the credit card authorization form or the invoice authorized payment form that I have. Again, it just says your invoice. Click below for the latest invoice balance that requires your authorization to proceed. So I'm going to add here action required. Your invoice CC authorization requested. And then I'll change that to say first name. But I want to look over at forms really quickly. So you see how it says credit card authorization? That other form that was listed, and we covered this in the previous step, was likely archived. All right. So for this specific form, this goes back to the terms and conditions that I've created, right? So if I click terms and conditions and I click this specifically, remember yours will be different. but tying everything together, terms and conditions needs to be done if there's something pointing to it. Specifically, the form for the credit card authorization is what I want to highlight again. The advanced option, right? So this one, it does have a client credit card authorization section because it's a payment. It also has the agreement terms and conditions. Now, the difference between the authorization section and the agreement are two things. The section is the amount they'd like to authorize and the card that they're choosing, right? They have to put this in. I'll show you guys real time what it looks like. It'll have options for them if it's tied to a booking. But that's the difference. The only other difference here that I've added when I built the form is for the client to put their full name, the trip start date, and the end date. You don't necessarily need that, but it doesn't hurt to have it. So go ahead and save that. And then I want to show you real time what these things look like. So I'm going to pull up an archive trip that has my email. First, I'm going to highlight the travel services agreement. These will all be separate emails. If there's a way to do all of them in one, there might be. I'm not going to figure that headache out. You could figure it out. But I'm going to click form. All right. So anytime I want to send a form that's not the invoice, it's going to click form. All right. Now, when I go to form, I'm going to click here, travel service agreement form, and it'll send it to me. In order to send it to a client, you have to have an email listed under the traveler to build any form, any itinerary, anything like that. So my best piece of advice to you is if you don't have the client's email yet, which I usually collect after the consult, I tell them to send me and text me their email. But just put yours for the time being, and you'll just have to update that. But if I click review email, okay, I want to show you, this is what we just crafted. The template, again, is what we have already done. I'm going to click send. And then in a second, I'll pull up my email and show you guys what it looks like from the client's perspective. But also what's nice is once it's sent here, it'll show up in messages and you'll be able to see if the client viewed it or submitted it, which is good. Also, I'm going to create a form here for the pre-departure booking information. So if I preview that, it's going to be what we built out. If I review the email, again, this is what we crafted. I'm going to send that. And then we're going to go back and we're going to go ahead and do the insurance. Preview. Again, this is what we built. Review email. What we built. Send. The last thing I'm not covering on here, on this training specifically, because there's a separate training for it, is the CC authorization and the invoice. That is a build out that is different. However, the process is going to be very similar. All right. So invoice, I'll click supplier. The difference between supplier and direct is direct makes it seem as if the payment is going directly to the supplier versus like you would collect the money and then you would pay the supplier. That is a big no-no, especially with Archer. Okay. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble. Don't do that. Just stick to supplier for the invoice. Now here I have templates, again, not covered today, but for the sake of examples, I'm going to just put a price in here. All right. I'm going to just put $100. Now, if there's a deposit and due date, again, watch that other video that I have. I'm going to just put this as the due date. don't click this. All right, offer travel insurance. This is directly through Travel Joy. But if I click preview, you guys can see that authorization section that we built out that I was referring to, and how there's an amount due and a remaining balance. The remaining balance would really be if the client is paying, over a period of time with different credit, or A, different credit cards, B, different payments spread out. That would be prearranged with the client. And they could also use this link to pay as they go. Or you could set up a payment plan, again, in a different training. But if I go ahead and click next, save review, then I'll go ahead and send it. And lastly, I want you guys to just see how it shows up in my email, and then we will be complete for today. So I'm going to do a new share. All right, so you guys should be able to see my screen for that, and then my screen also for the emails. So remember, I said I'm going to be sending 4 things. We have the travel services agreement. If I double click that, you guys should be able to see. All right, I'm going to download external images, but you should be able to see the agreement, okay, or the email. All I have to do is click view agreement. And from the client's perspective, this is what they need to do, right? So it's filling it out as me, or a new person can add themselves on here. Yes, it has my name there. I don't even need to type it, as long as that's the traveler info that was listed above. And then click to sign. They could type it, they could upload it. I'm going to click sign. Got it. Submit. And then that is the response. Again, this is all part of a separate training. So let's go to the next one. So this is the passport, right? So I'm going to click view form. Now I'm not going to fill this out, but you can see what it looks like. And I'll show you the difference of how it shows up on Travel Joy once we go through all 4. Right, trip protection. So view insurance form. So I can click accept it, or I can click deny. When I click submit form, it won't let me until I sign. So sign, submit. And then lastly, we're going to do the invoice. So open invoice. Again, it would have all the details. I can click other amount. I can click amount due, remaining balance. I can add my card here. See, this is how it would pop up. I would save it, and they'd have to do this each time, right? But hopefully they have it saved into their preferences. That makes it easier. The nice thing though is it doesn't save, so you're not really held liable for it then, right? And then the terms and conditions here, click authorize payment to submit the button. Again, I need to make sure that this is signed. But if I click authorize payment, I don't have a credit card, it's not going to go. So let's go back to the Travel Joy. I'm going to refresh this page, and I want you guys to see from a few different angles what it looks like from the agent's perspective. So if I click files, Look at the ones I've opened versus the ones that I've actually been able to submit. So these mean I have received them. So you will see this completed. If I go back to that files section, for the other ones, it's going to say open, but it's not going to have any info in it. Another thing that you can also do to see if anything's been submitted, under messages, you'll be able to track what you send if it's from here. So again, I sent this, it was open. It was open, open, and opened. I only received back the terms and conditions agreement and the insurance, right? I can also send emails from here. I can tie it to my actual email. But my best piece of advice is if I don't cover it on a training, search on YouTube, search on the actual supplier or the vendor that you are using and look it up. Okay, the internet is your best friend. So hopefully this was really helpful. I will also try and break this down into separate trainings, but this is the full version. So hope you guys learned a lot and find this helpful. Make sure to subscribe, like, or comment if you want to show me some love and want me to keep producing content like this. Have a great day.